We're blessed to have the good grace of the Creator around us in everyday life, but lately, as things have been shifting off into a whole new collective mass consciousness, many people don't feel nor recognize the presence of divinity in their lives. Can you blame them? After all, life is full of such challenging situations and suffering that sometimes it makes it hard for people to see the good. The inability to see the hand of God at work in everyday life comes from the way that people are taught to perceive things as well. I've worked with thousands of people throughout my time, hundreds every year. On top of that, I'm also an otherworldly soul who's living on earth and witnessing these times as an outsider looking in. And I can see how people get the wrong idea about a lot of things. As a teacher of illumination, I often have to put my students under the test in order to determine whether their mentality is changing to match their growth in the right or wrong way in what they're learning. I'll often try to catch them with parables or even situations where they have to utilize the same wisdom and spiritual analysis that I've taught them to see if they come up with the right answers. I learned that through Metatron, and he learned it from the Most High. Likewise, God will create temporary scenarios where it will test the way that a person reacts. He longs to see if the people or the person will understand to the fullest extremity by thinking outside of oneself and instead thinking more like the divine. Sometimes I'm astounded by the wisdom that the heavens have given out to people throughout the years that I've been doing in my work, in the blogs, in the conversations, in lessons, and in personal readings. Truly, the heavens have given us so much to treasure. I honor what they took the time to provide the advice and the insight so that I could go on as a teacher to teach other people. The world is not such a good place, though. People seek divine intervention all the time, but not many people feel as though they've received it, even when they've needed it or after they've asked for it. Humans, not such a master builder. The higher ups know what's best for everybody, and humans sometimes lack discernment that they don't always know what's always best for themselves. They really don't. They're full of judgments, even toward themselves. And at times, they want only what they want, even if it isn't best for them. It's not a secret that the ego is what rules over each and every person's character. One of the reasons as to why people never transcend the ego is because they have the completely wrong outlook on what it is and how to work on it. And that, in turn, keeps them from being able to look at things in life or in other people the right way. I'm teaching all kinds of people how to finally transcend the ego, and when they do, they will find something so wonderful there, but even beyond what they could have possibly imagined when starting out the journey with me. But it's true, the ego is what stands in the way for many things, even being able to see that sometimes they have to let go of trying to be in control of their own destiny. How can anyone create their own reality if they don't have the information that they need to do that, or what they're even supposed to create? Humans also changed our minds and interests so much, that you have to imagine how much of a mess it would truly be if they were left to become builders of their own, doing whatever they wanted. It'd be all over the place. It already is. It'd be like a person trying to build a bungalow at first, and then all of a sudden the trend is a new 2-story colonial home. And so they're trying to change a bungalow into the 2-story colonial. But then suddenly that's not even what's hot anymore. And it seems that even that trend has changed, as trends always do. And then suddenly everybody starts going for the Greek revival style. Now the person is trying to turn their part bungalow, part colonial into a Greek revival, just being left to do whatever they want without the skills, tools, and with the mind, that's forever following the crowd. So as you can see in this parable, if a human can't even build a house without changing their mind so many times, making it an incomplete project, how can they even really know what they want for themselves and in major decisions pertaining to that? Especially, they're going to permanently benefit them later if they don't know what that is. The truth is, God knows what's best for everyone, and humans lack such perception, and because of that, many times only can they see from their very own eyes and position in life. God works through all things, and that is why it's said that he works in mysterious ways. I'll give you a perfect example in the story of a client whose name is Claudia. Hi, Claudia. Thank you for letting me use you as an example. Claudia actually went to the same high school I did, and we weren't friends. We only spoke just a few times, and they're through a cousin of hers who was in one of my classes. And God works in mysterious ways because a long time ago, Claudia had been dating a guy named Bruce, back in high school. And they truly believed that they were meant to be together forever. The connection was so strong. And even though they were still young, they couldn't imagine themselves with anybody else. And not even in the future, So they had these great plans. But as soon as high school ended, Bruce proposed to her. Everybody thought it was cute, and they truly loved each other and believed that they were getting married and that it would be the right thing to do. And so it was always her dream to have this great winter wedding, and they planned to get married later that year in December. Kudos to December. A lot of people tried to advise them to wait, including me. It was only right after the senior year in high school, and there were so many older people in their families that told them, you have to wait, maybe rethink this. And they told them, you might not feel the same way in the future. But a lot of their relatives suggested to them to try to maybe just live together first if they really wanted to be together that badly. But as far as getting married was concerned, everybody, friends and family, myself, told them to maybe put the wedding off for at least another year or two. But they wouldn't listen, they loved each other, they wanted to do what they wanted to do, and there was just something that made them feel as if it was meant to be. So it was already fall by the time that Claudia's cousin suggested her to come to talk to me for a little bit. And obviously a lot of people knew about my gifts back then. I didn't hide them anymore by the time I was in high school. In fact, I was pretty open about them all of my life, even when I was bullied for them as a child. So I started to open up, and just saying, forget it, might as well just be myself. It's going to happen anyway. So I ended up getting homeschooled for a little bit of time, but I was extremely excited to go back to school for a little bit and try it out again. My father told me I'd probably enjoy it a lot better, with everybody having grown up a little bit. And perhaps maybe the bullying wouldn't be so bad anymore as it had been. So I never hid, and I wasn't about to start at that point in time either. And I talked to anybody that I thought would really listen. I would share my spiritual knowledge, my insight, when I came across people that were interested. I wouldn't push it on people. But Claudia's cousin was happy to be one of the listeners, and she had mentioned to Claudia a number of times, even after I had spoken to her very briefly about the situation, that everyone in the family was having doubts, and maybe she ought to talk to someone that could look into the future and see. And so she brought her over to me, and we had a longer sit down. Of course, Claudia was a little bit of a skeptic at that point of her life because she wanted to marry Bruce. She didn't want to hear anything else, but she was willing to give it a try. And I don't really remember the date. I don't think she can either. But when she finally decided to come and talk with me, I do know that it was close to around the time that they had planned the wedding. So I first had to confirm, my insights were truly real. And I did so by pretty much telling her everything along the lines of what she was thinking and feeling. And I even went into some other things that were on a deeper level for her that she really hadn't shared much with other people. So in that, she was more open-minded, more comfortable with the idea of having me look into the future setting with Bruce. Now, when I looked, I told her, that the two of them had a great connection, but that they would experience hardships and give up at some point in the future because of their inability to persevere or find the true meaning of unconditional love. I told her that if they could understand the meaning of it, then they would have a beautiful life ahead of them. Well, I suppose I said something that she didn't want to hear, because telling her that they would have hardships and probably walk out on each other made her get up and walk out on me. So Bruce and Claudia ended up getting married just a few weeks later. And I can tell you that their first year of marriage went beautifully. Her cousin definitely kept me up to date. I'm always interested in hearing how people are, I love people. However, the second year of marriage, they ended up moving and lost touch with everybody on Claudia's side of the family, and Bruce had kept in touch with his, though. Nevertheless, they struggled to make ends meet, and Bruce and Claudia both had to end up getting jobs that neither one of them were proud of. It wasn't just enough to support an entire household to work at minimum wage. So Bruce had gotten involved in some illegal activities for extra cash, and through the stress and paranoia that he carried every day because of that, he ended up getting himself addicted to drugs as well. They had been married for a total of 4 years. By that 4th year, there were financial struggles, drug addiction, arguments, and later infidelity. And to add to all of that, the 4 years that they had been trying for a baby, which they both really wanted, but despite of the difficulty they were facing, they still loved each other and thought maybe bringing a baby into the relationship would bring them closer. But these were all things that I had told Claudia about, She just thought that having the baby would make their lives happier, but there was no child. And they both lived always afraid that Bruce would get caught and that the arguments turned bad to worse. And it was now halfway through the 5th year of their marriage that Claudia decided to leave him. Everything just kind of fell apart altogether. And at the same time, because before she got a chance to tell him, he was caught selling drugs and ended up getting arrested. He had been sentenced to 3 years in prison. After his hearing, Claudia booked a visit to the corrections facility, and she broke the bad news to Bruce that she was leaving him. She had even brought divorce papers with her there for him to sign. So, of course, Bruce got upset and told her that he felt like she was abandoning him in a time of his life where he needed her the most. But he knew that he hadn't always treated her the right way, nor had he always been faithful either. As she walked away, she knew in her heart that she had loved him truly, but it just didn't seem as if they were going to have that happy life together as they had hoped for after all. And so Claudia made her way onto a new pathway in life in hopes of maybe finding that happiness elsewhere, which is what most people do. They always go from one relationship to the next. I have no idea why. But finally, Claudia gets a good paying job, and after taking some college courses at night, she gets a better job. And then she saves her money, she gets herself a small place for rent, and now, by that time, she begins working so much and ends up meeting Antoine, who she ends up feeling so attracted to. They end up spending a lot of time together, and that resulted with Antoine living with her. But Antoine never had a job really of his own for that long, and he ends up quitting, and Claudia gets stuck paying for all the bills and the necessities for them both, and then she even ends up getting pregnant by Antoine. But even knowing that they have a little girl on the way, Antoine still does nothing to better himself financially in life, and he just lazily hangs around the house all day while she's working. Even toward the end of her pregnancy, she could have had a leave of absence and rested up a bit, but he should have gotten up to work. But Antoine never wanted to work. He even left her with having to buy all the baby's furniture and all the new clothing. He always made an excuse that he couldn't find a job or that new places weren't really hiring. And this was what she was telling me because she kept in touch with me after she left Bruce, but she still didn't take my advice, when she needed to take it. Nevertheless, she went on to test him and went to fill out applications for him. And sure enough, one of the applicants that she had filled out called back. And of course, he comes up with this excuse on why he doesn't want to work there and it's not going to be a good situation for him. And she got fed up and finally kicked him out, realizing that she's pretty much doing everything on her own anyway. So I add more burden to her life by allowing some guy to live there and not do his part, So her question was, had he ever really loved her? Would he be doing that if he did? Why wasn't he doing what he could? But yet he did nothing. Over time, Bruce finally got released from prison. And while he was in there, he took the prison up on some offers for continuing education. He learned a trade. He was excited to start his life working in it. And eventually he ends up saving up a lot of money. And he wants to open up his own business using his skills. But he fears that maybe his criminal record might ruin that for him. And I can understand that. I think anyone could. So he asked his brother if he could put the business in his name instead. And the brother said he would do anything to help him, anything. And he wanted to be a good brother to help him in life. And so Bruce ended up doing great work and received many references. And soon, through that and many ads, he ended up doing quite well for himself financially. But it's not long after that he ends up meeting a woman that he got pretty serious with. After some time living together, I had heard that she also wanted to continue a family. Now, we all grew up together, so the word travels. But since Bruce always wanted to be a father, he didn't really see any reason why they shouldn't give it a try. He wanted a baby with Claudia. But he's a hopeless romantic type, and he followed his heart rather than his head. But the girlfriend also had trouble getting pregnant. She didn't even realize that she had infertility issues and went to an IVF treatment with him. But that still didn't work. It was determined finally by the doctors that Bruce could not have children of his own. The girlfriend decided to leave Bruce because she wanted children. That was her end goal. But obviously, it would be a lot harder than expected to build a family with him. If she stayed with him, she wouldn't get what she wanted. After the girlfriend left, he thought about Claudia quite a bit. In fact, he never stopped. He missed her a lot all those years. And he wasn't alone in feeling that way because deep down, Claudia always missed him too. She just tried to do the best that she could to move on with her life. Back then, it didn't appear to her that Bruce had direction in his at the time, and she didn't want to wait around for it. She certainly felt as though she deserved a lot better. In fact, it appeared as if he had a path in life that led to a dead end due to his mistakes. But by the time each of them were living life according to where faith and God had driven them, everything was getting in order. One day a bad storm came and Claudia's rental home ends up getting flooded. All of the bottom cabinets in her kitchen are waterlogged. The landlord tells her that he's going to call a company to come out and replace the cabinets, fix the flooring. He only asks that when he makes the appointment for the company to arrive at her home to fix everything, that she be there to wait for the repair people. And so she waits there and she's preparing to explain, what happened with the flooding to help the landlord because the landlord can't do it. And he books the appointment. Claudia stays home with her little girl and waits for the workers of the repair place to arrive. She stared down at the little girl. The baby was half Caucasian, half African American. Claudia is a Caucasian woman, but Claudia adored her. She was lost in a tender motherly moment of admiration. But an hour had passed and the workers were already almost there. Now, it wasn't long before the workers arrived, and to both of their surprises, it was Bruce and his company. Because of his great reputation and fair prices, the landlord had gotten in contact with him and his company to book this appointment in hopes of getting a good job done, but while also being able to save money. But the smile on their faces at meeting with one another again really was a picture that was imprinted upon time, and it was priceless. After all those years of having been apart, they had never stopped thinking of one another. Every single thing that happened led them back to this moment in their apartment at that time. And they were so excited to see each other. They had forgotten that he was actually there for a job. They were talking and he was supposed to be working, but they were just so deeply intertwined together, this deep connection that they had. It was still there after all that time. And so they thought about giving it another try. However, Claudia had a baby with someone else. So that bothered him a little bit because he wanted a baby with her, and he also tried having a baby of his own, but he felt badly, that he wasn't the father, and that sat with him for a while. Still, they had come to me both and asked what the point of all of that was. Why was their marriage doomed to fail? Why did he get arrested? Why did she have a child with someone else and he couldn't? And it was God's plan all along to bring this couple of love together so that they could raise this child together, because Bruce couldn't have children. That was their family, made the family complete. Didn't matter where the baby came from. It was that God ordained all of this together. It did bother Bruce a little bit that the child was half African American, though, because he was also Caucasian. Maybe he could have passed the child off as his if she had been all white. But Bruce was very confused, and it didn't seem that he was really able to cope with the fact that the woman that he had loved, had a child with someone else, let alone that the child was not the same ethnicity or culture. But how could he get back together with her having a child that was obviously darker color and skin? That was his main thought. So all these lessons of unconditional love really did run throughout their relationship. And he thought about what his family would say, what other people would say. So he just got up and told her eventually that he wasn't going to try to work things through. So it's apparent what happened in this entire situation, and what it was about from the very beginning was God's work always ever in our presence. How many people could see that? They look at all the negatives, just like Bruce or even Claudia when she's seen him getting arrested. They don't see it, the idea of what could actually become, and they fail to recognize what's at the heart of everything. In this particular situation, Bruce and Claudia had trouble having children on their own, but wanted them. They wanted each other. And Bruce was a mess and he couldn't get his life together. And neither one of them really had stability. There was also a need in learning how to treat one another and themselves with respect, as well as learning the definition of unconditional love. There's a lot of confusion in looking for the hand of God in action, or even at negative spiritual influences in a person's life. People can't tell the difference. The path of life could be going in either one of those directions, handled by either one of the forces of good or evil, or a battle between both. In some instances, this situation could have kept leading Claudia and Bruce back together, or it could continue a cycle of hurting each other for a lack of acceptance in one another's flaws or mistakes, or to see that maybe those mistakes weren't mistakes but gifts. This would create so much negativity and karma and brokenheartedness in them if they couldn't come to that clarity. But in this sense, the negative was actually positive, and together they could have finally had the child if Bruce could look past the color of the little girl's skin and finally maybe work at building this happy life together, that all of this cycled back around. But could he get past the prejudiceness? How could he see everything in his life at that moment with those feelings, And so there's a lot of reflection and projection that people really have to work out. It may be true that in certain pathways that life is being forced by one side of duality or the next, but it doesn't mean that even in a bad situation in life that perhaps leads towards a terrible fate, that it couldn't be redeemed somehow with the hand of God with you. But even then, it is hard for some people to recognize when God finally does step in, or to turn off their way of perceiving things in a worldly way, a selfish way, or even in just being blind. It's very clear that when you're born into this world and you're growing up, they don't teach you these types of things. They don't teach you the right way of looking at situations on either side of the fence, nor can people really read that deep or see into the future. But that's why there are others like myself out here to help give insight. If not, you can pray on it, you can meditate, you can search within your own heart and see at a deeper level how you really feel about certain things, and give things time instead of jumping at every single situation or emotion or reaction, which is what Bruce and Claudia did. Reacting on emotion doesn't get you anywhere, but giving peace and meditation can help. They walked away when it was toxic, but not knowing that God had inspired that to happen to them to better them both, they had never imagined that they would cross paths again. So in this particular story, it was definitely Heavenly Father's work that had intervened in the lives of those two people. And I tried to help them, throughout that course of time. But I had told them they were definitely meant to go with some obstacles. But even though they didn't want to hear me back then, they can certainly see how that's correct now. They finally did get back together, and Bruce is raising Claudia's daughter happily without the judgment of the color of her skin. And his family does accept the child. He was overthinking things and allowing his emotions to get the best of him. But they took my advice, and now he's learned to put his feelings behind him, and he's even inspired his family to also accept those of color, because some of them were a little off about it. But the little girl continues to be an inspiration for all of them, coming to strive to do well. And it was all for the sake of that blessing right there, that all of those negative things led to the places that they did. It was a blessing in disguise through all the heartache and the pain. And those people grew and learned from imperfections and mistakes. But coming back to me, we analyzed all of that, and they are now working towards not just trying to perfect themselves for each other, but how to do so for heaven. However, this is for the people that don't have that kind of guidance right now, or from the beginning, which many people don't, but from this point forward, they will. Hopefully, all they have to do is ask and seek through different situations that come up for them, just as you can. And that can help you to avoid future pain if it's unnecessary. Why go through a situation that's not going to lead anywhere? Or why give up on one that could lead to everything? You never know. But you have to listen to the advice and put your faith in it, that heaven provides those answers when you go seeking for them. So what elements in your life today seem to be negative that could be controlled by either side of the forces? Do you need help in understanding how they can come together for the good, or if they're there ultimately to just bring you down in the end? It's something to think about, but don't give up and don't react instantly. Nevertheless, always try to see where God is trying to help you. He may even lead you to small things hidden in the background in the chaos of life that you may miss out on. God is everywhere. He's omnipotent and always true. True, deep inner reflection work can help you find the Lord right by your side and clear the way to destiny through the good and the bad in life until it all becomes good. So don't give up and don't lose hope, and don't lean upon your own understanding. Many blessings.